Welcome to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, respective radio stations island-wide, Tel TV Plus, Channel 15, and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Finance, Marinka Gums, to address you. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Fellow colleague ministers, members of the press, and to the people of St. Martin, good morning and blessed day to all. I want to take this opportunity to provide you with important updates on several key matters. Status Publication Budget 2025. The budget for the year 2025 was approved by Parliament on January 17, 2025. Following its approval, the amendments presented and approved by Parliament must be accurately incorporated into the budget. Since there is no automated budget system, these changes are made manually across approximately 200 pages, covering both the notes book and the numbers book of the budget. Certain amendments have a trickle effect, meaning changes in one area can impact other sections. This makes it critical to ensure accuracy and consistency throughout the document. Unlike previous budgets, where there were minimal changes, the 2025 budget includes 6 numerical amendments, 3 from the government and an additional 3 from Parliament. After verification, the budget will be sent back to Parliament to confirm that all amendments have been accurately incorporated. Once Parliament verifies the changes, the budget will be returned to the government and then submitted to the Governor for publication. It is important to note that the budget is never published on the same day as its approval because this process is part of the mandatory post-approval procedure. However, due to the number of changes in the 2025 budget, it is taking slightly longer than usual. For context, the amended budget for 2024 was approved by Parliament on October 29, 2024, and published on November 5, 2024, a week later, despite having no changes. Due to the standard process, given that the 2025 budget contains 6 amendments, the process is understandably more time-consuming. Savings plan. I am pleased to announce that approximately 260 civil servants have enrolled in the savings plan, which commenced in January 2025. This initiative was introduced following a recommendation received during Finance Fridays. My goal remains to promote finance literacy, and I am encouraged to see so many individuals, which includes my person, taking advantage of this opportunity to improve their financial well-being. Improvements Receiver's Office. During a recent visit to the Receiver's Office, I observed the lines for vehicle tax payments. I would like to begin by commending the cashiers, as I have received numerous compliments on how efficiently the lines are moving. Their dedication and hard work are truly appreciated and play a significant role in maintaining smooth operations. I would also like to commend the residents who have already made their vehicle tax payments. Your timely compliance contributes to the efficient functioning of the system and helps support vital public services. However, I recognize that there is still room for improvement to enhance the overall customer service experience provided by the government. To address this, I will be reinforcing several changes aimed at improving the experience to our residents at the Receiver's Office. 1, seating to ensure comfort while waiting. 2, priority service to the elderly to reduce their waiting times. This is provided at window number 6. And I'm kindly requesting that you please come with the following documents. Number 1, the bill of sale, if it's a new vehicle, and your current valid insurance and current valid inspection. Please have those at hand to expedite the lines as you get to the counters. These planned improvements are part of a broader efforts to continuously improve public service and ensure a more citizen-friendly environment when interacting with government offices. And lastly, sexual harassment. Sexual harassment in the workplace regardless of the perpetrator's gender, is a violation of human dignity and will not be tolerated. Every employee has the right to a safe and professional environment free from intimidation, harassment, or abuse. The recent revelations of persistent misconduct within the government of St. Martin expose a systematic failure to protect victims and hold perpetrators accountable. I commend those who have come forward despite the fear of retaliation. Your courage is not only admirable, but necessary to break the cycle of silence and impunity. It is appalling that individuals accused of repeated offenses remain in positions of authority while victims are forced to endure further victimization. This is not just a legal matter, it is a fundamental issue of justice, safety, and integrity, and that demands urgent and decisive action. As a female leader and Minister of Finance, I stand with victims and will use my position to advocate for meaningful change. There must be clear policies within government to address sexual harassment, strict consequences for offenders, and a workplace culture where employees feel protected, not powerless. Too often, we as a society express outrage for a moment, not only to move on when a new issue arises. But this is one matter I refuse to turn a blind eye to. No institution can function effectively in an environment of fear and intimidation, and I will not allow this to be normalized. The government has a duty to act, and I fully intend to see what we do. The time for excuses has passed. The time for real accountability is now. This matter will be addressed during the upcoming Council of Ministers meeting, where we will assess the current mechanism in place and determine necessary improvements to ensure that such issues can be safely and anonymously reported, with strict consequences for any violations. This is an issue that affects the entire government apparatus and will not be tolerated under any circumstances. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Justice, Natalie Tacklin, to address you. Minister Tacklin, you have the floor.
Good morning, members of the media, and of course to the DCOM staff and all of those viewing and watching at home. I have a few brief remarks, and of course, I just like to sit here and really answer questions during the press briefing. But of course, I'll start kind of with the hot topic, just very briefly, when it comes to the recent discussions on social media regarding sexual harassment. I don't want to use this time to comment on any specific or individual cases, but what I do want to stress is that sexual harassment in the workplace is a serious issue that affects the safety and well-being of all employees. Creating and maintaining a safe work environment is also a top priority here in the Ministry of Justice as well. And everyone, of course, deserves to work in a space free from intimidation, harassment, or any other form of misconduct. I also want to say that it takes immense courage to speak up about such experiences, and I encourage anyone who feels that they have been subjected to or witnessed inappropriate behavior to come forward. Support for these individuals is available through the victim support services, and I urge anyone to make use of these services as well. Furthermore, yesterday I received the ministry's draft policy on sexual harassment, which has been being worked on for quite a while, and actually by my previous predecessor. And I will be reviewing this thoroughly and to ensure that it aligns with our commitment to a safe and respectful work environment within the Ministry of Justice. Then I also wanted to talk about a visit from the Progress Committee for the VGT project. This is a project when it comes to strengthening border security and our border management. It's a project that's funded through the Netherlands, by the Netherlands. It's one that's been ongoing for a number of years and takes place through a number of different departments. So it's a collaboration with, of course, we have involvement from the Coast Guard, from KPSM, from Customs, and immigration. So as part of this, also we opened a new police substation in Colby at the Opal Building. And I know that we had various members of the media present there. So I wanted to take a moment again to congratulate Chief John on this really beautiful achievement. I think it's going to be a great place, I think, where different departments can come together and work together effectively. And I think that the Opal Building and the police substation there is a great step in our battle to address crime at our borders. I think the location is also quite essential. You know, it stands right there in Colby at kind of the precipice of multiple points of entry into St. Martin. We have the border to the French side right there. We have a border on the water, and then we also have the airport. So it's a very strategic choice, and I'm really happy to see this come to fruition. And I also thank the Netherlands and for their support, and of course through the VGT project, because they were the ones that really made this possible. Then I also wanted to talk about just a continued collaboration with law enforcement here. As I mentioned before, there's a so-called a driehoek meeting. It's a tripartite meeting between the PG, the Chief of Police, the Chief Prosecutor, and the Minister of Justice. There was quite a while within the ministry that these sessions were not being held. However, I did find it very important to reestablish and repair the relationships with these partners in the justice chain, and we have since resumed having these meetings, and we've actually had 2 thus far, and we're ensuring that there's a strong coordination between myself, the Chief of Police, and the Chief Prosecutor, and the Office of the Advocate General. And besides that, we also continue to have daily contact with one another about the real issues happening here on the island and facing us, whether it comes to capacity issues at the prison, you know, road controls, really everything across the board. You know, I'm positive and happy so far for a very fruitful working relationship with those entities. Other than that, I also had very productive meetings last week with with representatives of the Ministry of BZK to discuss further collaboration together when it comes to the prison and subsidy support that has been granted by the Netherlands, and discussing how the Netherlands can assist me and my cabinet and this ministry in achieving our shared goals and achieving a stronger, more resilient, and stronger justice chain. So I thank them for their continued trust and support, and that will be all for me in terms of comments, but of course I remain available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, Grisha Heilige Martin, to address you. Minister Heilige Martin, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you,Ulaika. Good morning to my fellow colleagues. Good morning to the members of the press. Good morning to St. Martin. I would like to first take this opportunity to clarify a statement I made during the radio interview on Lady Grace on Monday, January 27th on the Breakfast Lounge, as I've been receiving a lot of calls about it and I don't want the statement to be misunderstood. The topic of discussion was the Swaliga Marketplace, and as quoted in the Daily Herald, and I stated, we are supposed to have 55 vendors, but only 30 has signed off on the new concept, which prompted a reassessment. Currently, an internal audit is being conducted, and once completed, we will determine how many vendor stall will be available for the new applicants. There is a maximum of 60 to 70 stalls in the marketplace. To clarify that, the purpose of the reassessment is to streamline the marketplace by prioritizing local entrepreneurs who depend on it as their premier source of income. Our goal is simply to ensure a diverse selection of products with a strong emphasis on locally made goods. We will be paying close attention to the local entrepreneurs and fostering the creations of authentic St. Martin-made products. And the vision is to enhance the Swaliga marketplace with a well-balanced mix of offerings. Once the process is complete, we will publicly announce available stalls and open applications for vendors to apply and go through the selection process for securing a booth. Additionally, some good news. The mobilization and layout of the marketplace construction began this morning, February 5th. 2025. The GO project and hydroponics. On January 21st, I had the pleasure of visiting Asha Stevens School in Cahill. where I met with Ms. Asha Stevens and toured their impressive hydroponic system, one of the first established under the government's agriculture initiatives financed through the Green Overseas Go project. This initiative is part of a broader plan to develop 8 hydroponic farms across St. Martin and to modernize and diversify our agriculture sector. The visit reinforced the school's commitment to sustainable farming, and discussions were held on ensuring that these efforts create a long-term benefit beyond the project's timeline. Next, I would like to talk about the TEWEO Conference on Economic Resilience. During the Take the Reins conference, organized by TEWEO in collaboration with the Economic and Tourism Department of Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Martin, I had the opportunity to address critical challenges regarding economic development and diversification, particularly in the face of climate change. This conference was timely, especially given the recent U.S. tariff on Mexico and Canada, which could have ripple effects on our economy, particularly in our tourism and trade. While St. Martin is not directly targeted, we must remain proactive as inflation, rising costs, and potential economic slowdowns in the U.S. could impact visitor spending, travel decisions, and overall economic stability. Beyond tourism, we must also prepare for rising costs of imported goods, including food. I have been actively engaged in regional trade, trade discussions to secure food security and also reduce dependency on expensive import. Strengthening these partnerships will be crucial in ensuring a resilient economy. In the coming months, we plan to finalize a few MOUs with regional countries surrounding St. Martin. It is also refreshing to meet the stakeholders at the execution level. It was refreshing for me beyond the tripartite meetings I attended as MP in the IPCO conference. My message to the participants was clear. We must work together as one CAS, as a CAS unit, so Curaçao, Aruba, and St. Martin, learning from each other's experience to tackle common challenges. I surely and sincerely hope that Aruba and Curaçao will continue this engagement, and I plan to share the findings of the conference in a subsequent press briefing or press release. Garbage bin placements in Philipsburg. I'm pleased to announce that the tender of 80 communal garbage bins has been awarded to quality sweepers. This initiative is part of the CAPEX 2023 program under the Philipsburg Revitalization Project. These strategically placed bins will enhance waste management and cleanliness in our capital, a critical step in maintaining and a welcoming environment for both residents and visitors. This effort aligns with the broader Philipsburg Master Plan, which aims to beautify and revitalize the area, ensuring a cleaner and more vibrant future for St. Martin. SOG lien on SCDF account. The government is actively working with the St. Martin Carnival Development Foundation, SCDF, to address financial challenges, particularly in light of the recent SOG lien on its account. While SCDF's income has been sufficient to cover operational costs, outstanding debts from previous years continue to hinder financial stability. Additionally, last year's decision by the former government to grant a permit to another event competing with Carnival further compounded financial setbacks. That decision led to sponsors pulling out, canceled shows, and a decline in season pass sales, all of which negatively impacted the SCDF revenues. A draft agreement is now in place and will be discussed in the Council of Ministers meeting tomorrow. Provided that the Council approves the proposed solution, Carnival will proceed as planned. We remain committed to ensuring the continued success of this major cultural celebration and economic driver. Further details will be shared once the government finalizes its course of action. Next, I'll go on to public transportation updates. Since the reinstatement of the confirmation letter process on January 16, 2025, the Inspectorate of Economic Transport Affairs has made steady progress in digitizing administrative procedures, improving efficiency, and enhancing oversight of permits and public transportation operation. However, to date, only 100 vehicles was inspected by the Transportation Control Unit. Public buses, 15 out of the approximately under 300. Taxis, 74 out of the approximately 500 plus. G-plates, unregulated transport, 6 out of the approximately 100. T-plates, 5 out of approximately 200. These are the challenges we've identified thus far. Language barriers between operators and controllers, incomplete or outdated registration document, assistant drivers struggling to obtain authorization letters, and operators facing technological challenges with digital registration. All operators, this is my one-time reminder publicly, all operators must complete the confirmation letter process by or before February 25, 2025 to ensure compliance before February 28, road tax deadline. All registered vehicles must have a valid motor vehicle inspection, a valid insurance policy, properly functioning lights and windshield wipers, and a first aid kit and working fire extinguisher. Government, I'd like to also announce, received the draft reports from both the Integrity Chamber and SOAB regarding taxi and bus permit. These findings will guide our restructuring of the sector, which I plan to announce in a separate press briefing. We are now in the final 20-day countdown for compliance. A public awareness campaign will launch via official letters to the Bus and Taxi Association, digital notification via WhatsApp and social media, and press release and media outreach. We urge all operators to comply before or by February 25th, 2025. Our goal is to address all illegal operators and ensure fairness in the public transportation sector. For more information, please contact the Inspectorate of Economic and Transport Affairs at 559-7685. That's 559-7685 via call or WhatsApp. And lastly, as a woman, I'd like to also address sexual harassment in the workplace. It is unacceptable and must be condemned at all levels. No one should feel unsafe, disrespected, or powerless in their workplace. To all women and men experiencing harassment, stand up, speak out, take control of the situation. You are worth so much more than anyone's attempt to belittle or intimidate you. Do not let anyone make you feel inferior. Support is available, and together we can create a work environment where respect and dignity are the standard. Thank you, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Minister Heilige Martin, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. We now move over to the question and answer session. However, I would like to inform that the Minister of Finance, Marinka Gums, is feeling unwell and therefore left the press briefing. However, is asking members of the media to send all questions in writing to her cabinet, and she will be glad to answer them. The floor is open, and Bibi Hatshaw, you're up.
Good morning, Ulaika. Good morning, ministers, colleagues. My first question, Minister of Justice, please. Good morning, Minister. I'd like to let you know, as a woman myself, I also condemn sex. I'm obliged to ask you a few questions. Minister, based on my notes, this case or these cases of sexual harassment within the organization KPSM have been going on for in my view, 3 to 4 years. What I know back then is that KPSM, the Landsrecherche, and the prosecutor's office investigated the allegations made by not one, but by multiple officers of KPSM. Can you share with us what was the outcome of those investigations? Can you also tell me if there were any disciplinary measures taken against the person identified as the suspect in this case for unethical behavior? And can you tell me if the person is back at work and what is their current position?
There's indeed one incident that I received files for that took place back in 2022. That incident was in fact investigated, as you correctly noted. There were no criminal acts that were found out of that investigation. However, just because something isn't criminal doesn't mean that, like you said, it's not ethical or it's not right. And at the time, disciplinary measures were proposed over a period of a year. My understanding is that there was not a formal response from the government at that time. However, measures were taken by KPSM where the individual in question was moved somewhere else, where they were not directly over people and to address those concerns at that time. So those were the measures that, from what I understood yesterday, were taken at that time. I also know that currently there is another complaint that is also currently being investigated. From what I understood yesterday evening, those files are now with the prosecutor to see whether or not anything, again, criminal took place. And if not, based on those findings, we will then, of course, assess whether disciplinary measures are the right move at this time. So that's the amount that I can share and know at present about the case.
Do you have a follow-up, Bibi?
Yes.
Follow-up?
I'd like to know, Minister, the current legislation in place to address these kinds of matters, it has been very much outdated. Do you plan to update this legislation while in office?
Yeah, so coincidentally, yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning, and I would like to thank the previous minister, Anna Richardson, for bringing it to my attention, because as this came out, she actually reached out to me directly and she said, hey, when I was there, I was actually working just before I left on a draft policy with respect to a code of conduct and sexual harassment. So, she gave me the tip of maybe you can see where it is. So I want to thank her also publicly for sharing that with me and for being so Sam-American and collaborative on that. So I did since requested from the ministry to see where we were. So I received the last draft that was worked on. So we will review that within the cabinet and make changes and also look at what legislative changes are necessary to implement that.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Bibi. I would like to now invite Emil Lee of Island Nature Radio. You have the floor.
Good morning, Minister. So my question relates basically to financial management within the ministry. We spoke that there were still expenditures from 2024 that seem not to have been settled. One of which I understand is there's a fairly large outstanding for pro bono lawyers still to be paid. And then sort of a tangent to that, a few years ago, the government purchased the Soramar building for around 2 million guilders. The idea, I understand, was to be a shooting range, a training facility, but yet you're renting other facilities rather than fixing or building on a building that was already intended for those types of purposes. So those are sort of budget questions, how you're managing the finances within the ministry.
Yep. With respect to the pro bono lawyers, indeed, we are still processing invoices. There's also, of course, the matter within government where sometimes as justice we sign advices, we sign off, and then we think invoices are paid, but that doesn't go through our ministry. That's the Treasury, that's the Ministry of Finance. So sometimes I think it's something that some of my other ministers have also seen. That again, we don't control the purse at the end of the day. We do have a budget, but we don't control when things are paid within the government. And, these are issues that we run into recurringly because, of course, then I guess in finance, there's a decision of, do I make payroll or do I pay this? And choices have to be made on the other end. And those are things that we don't have insight into. Of course, we look at our budget and, there's a budget post, so please pay it. But then different assessments are made in a different ministry. So I think that those are the realities that we all have to deal with. And I'm also in discussions to see how we can assure that recurring payments for the Ministry of Justice, the pro bono lawyers also is one that some lawyers are also behind on when they invoice, and then they invoice a very large amount at one point and they don't do a monthly invoicing, so they'll wait. And then, of course, that also gives liquidity issues sometimes within government as well, so that, we kind of need to spread out the burden where that's concerned. That's the pro bono lawyers. As I said, for recurring payments, I'm also in discussion to see how we can improve things. For example, the Justice Ministry has large amounts that we contribute to the Common Court of Justice, to the Prosecutor's Office, to the Coast Guard, and these kinds of kingdom law institutions that we are obligated to be a part of and contribute to on a kingdom level. The experience has shown that a lot of times we are very, very, very late with paying these institutions that provide key critical services to this country. So I'm looking to see in discussion with finance, hey, if we know our contribution is 3 million this year, can we please just monthly, quarterly make sure that we're paying this, and not that, at one point in December, I suddenly have to make one payment for the entire year, because it's very difficult for these organizations to function as well in that way. And what we're seeing is a lot of times that they have to then use funds from our other islands, from Curacao, from the Netherlands, in order to subsidize St. Martin operations. And it's not a way that we should be functioning. So those are ways we're trying to do that. You asked me about the Soramar building. Indeed, I had also noticed a while back that they had cleared out the land there. I've seen that there are plans, but I think then we also have to be realistic sometimes in what we are able to do from a CapEx side of things as well, because to construct I think the idea was a Justice Academy, they were calling it at the time. Of course, you can make a Justice Academy as lofty and as great as you want, but I think we also have to be realistic, one, about the rentelossnorm, as we call it in Dutch, and what we are able to lend, or I should say to borrow as a country, and what we're allowed to from a CFT perspective and a budgetary perspective. And besides that, also, rent is one thing, but, we have ideas for other things, but then operational costs also come into play. Maintenance costs come into play. One of the things I noticed is we're not very great at maintaining the things that we have either. So, all of this brings a budgetary strain as well. And when we're operating in an environment where our budgets are constantly being cut, I'm also trying to see from that budgetary stance what makes the most sense and how can I best manage what we have and make it work. We know that we have a new prison coming that's going to significantly exceed the OPEX of our current prison. So those are also operational costs that I'm trying to account for and take into account. So there's a lot of moving parts within justice, and at the end of the day, we have a budget problem and we have a capacity problem. And I think right now it's a balance of setting priorities and seeing what makes the most sense. And I would love to have to build something there, even a substation or so we can look at properly repairing our Philipsburg police station. But there's a lot of choices that we have to make, and especially when we're heavily investing in a new prison project, it leaves us with very limited room to be able to do something else.
So just a clarification question. Your effectiveness as a minister, so we talked about ministries in the past working in silos, right? Mm-hmm. But your effectiveness as a minister is going to be heavily impacted if you believe vendors, suppliers are being paid, but then it goes to another ministry and you never get feedback on that. So how do you solve this as it impacts your ministry?
Yep. For right now, I've tried with especially those key stakeholders. I'm really trying to do a lot of work at improving the working relationship, the relationships with these various justice chain partners and institutions, and have that short line of contact. So very much now we're trying to lay the groundwork of how can we ensure that everybody can operate effectively and then also have those conversations with finance and within the Council of Ministers, that we have an understanding for the importance of each other's ministries. And I think that we're doing a good job so far with this Marcelina II cabinet in terms of really supporting each other's ministries and working together to achieve the common goal. I think that we're all very well aware that none of our ministries can stand without the strength and power of those around us.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Emil. I would now like to invite Jacqueline Hofmann of the Daily Herald. You have the floor.
Thank you. Also to the Minister of Justice. In answering questions in Parliament about matters of the Justice Department relating to the immigration detention, you cited from a report from 2004 from the Law Enforcement Council that the detainees were treated humanely. However, there's a new report from the Law Enforcement Council, and they say that the detention center is not up to par, not complying with national standards. It needs an upgrade and more staff. It doesn't mention the arrested immigrants that are placed in the police cells in Philipsburg. And deportees have to pay for their own ticket home. Some can't, and then they are held there sometimes up to 30 days or more, with the court then ordering to release people from from detention. What is your view on this? What is going to happen with the immigration detention and also with the police cells as a place for holding immigrants?
Yep. I'll speak in any case of since I've taken office. When it comes to the Foreigner Detention Center, also the report from the Raad voor de Rechtshandhaving, unfortunately I haven't formally received it from them as yet, but I have also learned of the content of it, and I look forward to receiving it formally in due course. But when it comes to the Foreigner Detention Center, one of the things that I managed through an amendment on the floor of Parliament in mid-January when we had the public handling of the meeting was I managed to secure 6 additional staff for the Foreigner Detention Center, because right now we are severely understaffed there. So within the coming weeks, we're hoping to be able to hire these individuals. We have people already. It's just a matter of now the budget being approved so that we officially have the budget post so that national decrees can be signed off on. So we will have an additional 6 staff. When it comes to the building itself, I mentioned in the opening statements the VGT project, the Versterking Grenstoezicht. Within that project, there's actually $1 million guilders earmarked to repair and improve the Foreigner Detention Center during 2025. Of course, we are now in discussions of what is realistic within 2025, because of course, sometimes we don't realize how difficult it is to spend money, especially when you have to do procurement and all of these types of things. It takes time to spend funds. So of course, we're looking at what is really feasible and achievable within 2025, and also looking to see if we need to hire that expertise to be able to lead that project and put together a plan on what exactly it is that we need for the Foreigner Detention Center. But I expressed to the group a month ago already that to me it's a priority that we fix this facility. And especially, I think now we're seeing we need to also, I think, be aware of geopolitics and what is going on in the region around us. And when it comes to unrest in Haiti, when it comes to mass deportations from the United States potentially, and movement that we're seeing within the region, is that St. Martin at the end of the day is a hub for people to pass through and try to get to different parts of the world. And I think that we need to work on our border strengthening, our border protection. But knowing that, we also need to know that we need to have a humane space where we can keep foreigners. Since I've been in office, we haven't had any court cases with respect to any foreigners held in foreigner detention. In addition, we haven't had any foreigners being held in police cells. The only situations that we've had currently is, of course, if somebody is arrested by the police and picked up by the OM, this case is then looked into. That person is given a dagvaarding and a laissez-passer, as we call it, and then they are handed over to immigration in order for immigration to look into their residency status. If we do find that this person is illegal, we place them in foreigner detention, and then, of course, we do deport them. We do have, typically most people within a day or two are able to arrange a ticket for them to leave. However, in cases where somebody cannot, I actually just a couple of days ago signed off that we paid for the ticket of a young lady to go back to her country of origin. But of course, we want it to be that, we don't want to keep people in there for too long. We don't want to separate mothers from children. We do have, criteria that we try to stick to, and it's one of the reasons that I haven't mandated this authority when it comes to refusals, when it comes to deportation. I've chosen to still keep this coming to me, even though it makes it that I have immigration outside my house at 11 o'clock at night, or sometimes even after that, with cases, because I do want to look at these on a case-by-case basis, and I want to do the right thing by people, regardless of your country of origin. So it's one that I'm really doing on a case-by-case basis and assessing the need to put someone in foreigner detention and look at what options we have available, and also how quickly we can send them out. But I think one of the other realities that we're facing is we have a very profitable and growing local airline in the form of Winair. But it also means that a lot of times I get stuck with country refusals from St. Kitts, from Tortola, and it is becoming a bigger issue for us. So it's one that we're trying to address together with them, together with immigration, work on our foreigner detention. So for me, it's a very high priority, and I think by the length of my and enthusiasm of my answer, you can tell that it's one that's close to my heart as well.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Jacqueline. We now move on to the second round. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ruleika. I call on the Minister of TIAT. Minister Harligan Martin, I took note of your statements regarding SCDF and the lien. As long as I can remember, Minister, SCDF has been having problems even with their financial statements and providing financial statements to the government of St. Martin, Ministry TIAT, to be able to obtain the subsidy that they get. Also, there are a number of complaints where SCDF do not even give people that participate in their competitions, their prizes. I mean, host of complaints. So what is happening today is not only because of a decision taken by the former minister. You mentioned the decision taken, but SCDF has been having a lifelong problem. While in Parliament, their decision, or there were talks about putting Carnival on bid. What's your thoughts today as minister? I know you made a commitment. People are talking about Soul Beach, but I want to talk about SCDF and its long-standing financial problems. If you can go into that for me, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Bibi, for your question. First and foremost, when I mentioned about what happened last year, I said that that's a compounded issue. And I agree with you. SCDF has a lot of financial issues. And from what I can recall and speaking with them in the last couple of months, their financials are up to date up to 2022. So they have been audited up to 2022, I think, up to 2022. So they're up to date with where their financials is concerned. I also mentioned earlier that I have a draft agreement right now with the CDF, and that we are going to be discussing that in COM. Once I have COM's approval and support, I will be then officially explaining to the public how we're going to move forward with SCDF. So for now, I don't want to give or delve into any more information until I have COM's support on how we move forward. And then on a subsequent press briefing, maybe just a press briefing on this alone, we will have we could go down the rabbit hole if you want and discuss everything on SCDF. But I promise to make sure be open and transparent with how we move forward with SCDF. But there's a plan in place, but it needs, of course, COM support.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Bibi. Emily, you have the floor.
Good morning, Minister. In a previous Council of Ministers discussion, there's quite some discussions about the waiving of lottery fees. If you could explain what was for whom were the lottery fees waived? Was it casinos as well? What was the reasoning? And do you feel that it sets a precedent? I understood it was perhaps related to COVID and closures. Would that not open the door then for other businesses who were also closed during that period?
Thank you, Millie, for your question. I want to take this opportunity because I kind of assumed and waited for this type of question to just make a clarification for the public before I answer your question. Regarding the 50,000 guilder threshold and the decision to waive fees, the 50,000 guilder threshold, as outlined in the mandate registry and relevant legislation such as the Rijkswet van Financiële Toezicht, and which is the National Accountability Ordinance, which primarily applies to entering any legal agreement, of procurement of goods or the contracting of services. It is a safeguard to ensure that decisions involving significant expenditures are subject to additional oversight. So in this particular case, the decision to waive fees does not involve an expenditure or a disbursement or funds, but rather a regulatory decision within the framework of the lottery ordinance. So I paid keen attention to 2 weeks ago, or was it last week's press briefing, where one was asked that if I had to come to COM. This has to do with the ordinance grants the minister the authority to manage the regulatory fees. So what was done internally is that we followed, and as mentioned before in the Parliament, we followed the jurisprudence of a decision that the former COM decided on casinos to waive fees for during the across the board for all casinos during the hurricane time and COVID time. So we used that as jurisprudence, and we created an internal mandate that any lottery company that comes with this request, once they provide or they meet the criteria, that these fees would be waived. And that's what we did across the board.
So just for clarity, because in particular for COVID, there was a whole plan to support businesses. There was a criteria, and it focused really on paying money for employees so that their livelihood was secured.
Right.
So don't you feel that there was already a plan? I mean, what about the stores on Front Street, for example, that were
that's
closed?
That's in general, but I don't think that the plan was you had to buy into it. You had to come in and you had to register for it. It wasn't across the board. Every business come over. You had to follow certain procedures. And based on what I've seen with this particular lottery, they didn't partake in that. And they only asked, actually, they didn't ask for COVID. This specific one, they only asked for during the hurricane time, which was just 10 months. So that's
so just for clarity, it's a decision for one lottery.
It was only, but it's an open invitation for any lottery that wanted to have those fees waived. They can come, but they need to follow certain criteria in order for us to waive the fees.
And that includes casinos?
No, this is lotteries.
Only
this
lotteries.
is for lotteries. The casinos was covered by the mandate from the former COM. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Emil. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
Thank you. The former Minister of TED, Leo Lambrix, he took to social media and wrote about the tender for the garbage bins. I quote, "This process was done back towards the ending of 2023. This was something already finalized just to execute." Mm-hmm. If you can explain that, and also why is the garbage bins under TED and not under VROMI?
Okay, first and foremost, I mentioned in my presentation that it came from the 2023 CapEx. I came in May 2024, so I clarified that. It was under his administration indeed, and it came under a CapEx for the revitalization of town, to revitalize Philipsburg. So that's where it came from. They wanted to enhance Philipsburg. I think the minister then also purchased, under his administration, purchased those bins, those concrete seats, benches. They purchased that, and the next step was to purchase these garbage bins. So I'm merely executing what was already there, and it's under a CapEx that's assigned for enhancements of Philipsburg.
And what is going to happen to those benches as most are broken?
I mentioned also in Parliament about a few weeks ago that I might even, I was thinking first to color them, to have maybe the school come and make a design, make it bright, because it's very pale. But on a weekly basis, we are faced with breaking the benches, breaking. So I'm at this point in time, we're looking in collaboration with VROMI to come up with an idea of what we're going to do with them, because they're not. I think that there is some steel in them, but not strong enough to make it to reinforce things. So I think we're going to talk to the company that first created them to see if they can redo them. If not, we'll have to pull them from town, because on a weekly basis they're breaking. So it's actually, to me personally, waste of money.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Jacqueline. We move on to the third round. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Minister, you spoke of the two reports from SOAB and the Integrity Chamber. I know you said you want to divulge more information in a future press briefing, but during your time in Parliament, and even when you just took office as a minister, you spoke of, holding people accountable for what was done and how these licenses were distributed. One of the key words you've been hearing, non-compliance. How do you plan to address that?
So based on the outcome of the reports, and actually we've already started coming up with a new framework, paying attention, because we met with the North Friend side, and we're actually following there, like I mentioned earlier, they're 10 steps ahead of us. So we're going to restructure how these licenses will be issued. And based on the reports, we will also decide whether if some of them can remain or not. And accountability would have to be taken based on how the procedure was done. Accountability would have to be taken from those that are also received it and know that they didn't maybe support submitted enough information probably. And the outcome, as soon as I have everything, and that's why I mentioned earlier, the confirmation letter is important. I have the drafts. The confirmation letter that everyone is supposed to receive to go and get their tax, road tax. It's important to register, because the last time we did this was about 2 years ago. So the database is completely out of whack, especially with the addition of all of these. So we're busy creating this database. If your name is not on that database, we cannot ensure that you have, that once we make the new regulatory decisions, that you will have your license. So that's why I made it very clear, by or before February 2025, make sure everything is in, because of the decisions we're about to make based on these reports. You might fall through the cracks. So I'm asking all taxi drivers, all, especially the new ones, go and get your confirmation letter. Make sure your papers are in place. I mentioned earlier that some of them, their papers are not in place. So as soon as this process is done, I will take this procedure and give everyone a holistic view of what the outcome is, because this is very integral in making sure that we have now a new regulations in place. The new regulations will focus on issuing and maintaining the permits.
Minister, let me ask you directly. Do you plan to turn over these reports to the prosecutor's office? The state secretary talking about wiping out corruption. Do you plan to submit the two reports to the prosecutor's office so that necessary actions can be taken?
Based on the outcome of our decision in the next coming weeks, I have a team of people in my cabinet, not in the ministry. Based on our outcome, we're going to make a decision to decide whether this information needs to go to them, yes or no. But from what I've gathered, I think the process on their end already started.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Bibi. Emil, you have the floor.
Minister, if you could verify, what is St. Martin's current head tax for cruise passengers? You had mentioned that you're in the process of doing a carrying capacity study, and it certainly seems as if the island has exceeded that carrying capacity study. If you remember, SHTA had done one a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But so if you could verify what St. Martin's head tax is, and many other islands have increased those head taxes substantially. So if we have so many passengers, wouldn't it make sense to look at increasing that head tax? I'm seeing other islands, $50, $52, 23 plus an environmental tax, a tourism tax of another $7. So making it $30. So aren't we, if you're looking at a tourist tax, wouldn't it make sense to review the cruise head tax as well?
Okay, I was about to ask if it's just the cruise head tax. I don't know it over. I can't give you that information right now off the top of my head, but I can get back to you on that. But it's so many different intricacies. So you're looking at the cruise head tax coming in. You're also looking at the tax that we pay for when you leave, the tax at the airport. And this from what I was told, the tourism tax will be incoming. Tourists on stayovers, alone. We're not sure as yet because the legislation is still at the start, and we need to still make a decision on where we're going to how we're going to implement that tourism tax. So I think I would rather wait to see the outcome of that legislation, have an internal discussion with the Minister of Finance, especially the Minister of Finance, to decide where we will place that tax, and then I can give you an overall breakdown of where we move forward with it.
But as I understand, indeed, the tourism tax is for passengers coming in via the airport.
The airport.
So the cruise tax, the head tax, I understood, is about $10 per person right now. So it seems to be low compared to other destinations.
But
are you willing
and
to
I
take a look at it?
How it works with the cruise industry, because you've been in this position as well, Emil. Do you need to just that's a discussion we're going to have across the board with all the cruise liners. So that's something I would have to. I can't make that decision. I would have to have the director of the harbor decide that. But I've always known that they have that. It's a major issue when you just increase it. It's an issue across the board. So we have to really take our time, and I would have to maybe speak with the director of the harbor to see if that's the direction he wants to go or not, because it's a very ticklish thing when it comes to the cruise industry to increase a head tax on them. So that I'm not sure of, and I'd have to leave it up to the director to decide.
Thank you, Minister. Jacqueline, you have the final question.
To the Minister of Justice.
Not me.
Yes.
I have one follow-up question. If you can give an update on the crime fund, where it was reflected on the budget and how much money is in the crime fund currently. And the question is, yesterday in Parliament there was a roundtable, a proposal roundtable approved. Do you support this proposal to have a roundtable with the stakeholders, and when will this take place in February?
Okay, about the crime fund, I know that there were questions before on, hey, were we paying for the OM out of the crime fund, etc. No, we were not, so I can answer that question at least. And then I'm trying to think off the top of my head right now. I believe there's about 4.5 million guilders in the crime fund. However, about 2-point-something million of that is VGT money. So from the border strengthening program, that was the subsidy that we received from the Netherlands. They placed that into the crime fund, and whatever we don't spend, of course, by the end of this year will reflow back to the Netherlands. So I believe in terms of crime fund money, again, off the top of my head, where it's around 2 million guilders or so that's currently in the crime fund. That's actually crime fund money. Then the round.
So it went from 6 to 2 in just a few months.
But if you were told 6, it could be that it was part of the VGT money. So right now there's 4-point-something in the crime fund, but not all of it is crime fund money. And then you have to remember, we also just purchased cars for the police out of the crime fund as well. But I have the exact expenditures and everything. I can share that. I discussed it, and at least I shared it with Parliament, or we discussed it during the budget handling. So I do have a end of December closure of that, but we can give some accounting for that. But it's not that there has been misspending out of the crime fund or anything like that, because that was checked.
Just for clarification, there needed to be a national decree for the purchase of the cars from the crime fund. Was that national decree signed, and when was it published?
The national decree, I believe that we were busy in the process of that still for the vehicles, because it was done in different phases as well. So it might have happened before me. I saw at least a tender, because we will be putting out a tender for the purchase of vehicles, which is then going through the Ministry of General Affairs, because it's facility services that then handles that. So that has been signed off on. So it's a longer process for us to get to that.
And then
the round table, I also read about it in the newspaper this morning on my way to work. And, I think there are different things. We've expressed to Parliament from the ministry perspective that we're always willing to sit and discuss, especially me as Minister of Parliament, with Parliament. I think now the discussion or the proposal that I read in the newspaper was to do that in a closed-door setting, and I think that we would be willing to do so. And I think, of course, then services are more open to discuss, but I am also willing to come as Minister of Justice at any time and explain to Parliament what the issues are that we're facing when it comes to capacity in Point Blanche, when it comes to probation services, and when it comes to anything to do with the justice chain. At this point, I'm very deeply familiar myself, and I don't even really need to bring all the different organizations to answer those questions.
But are you going to set a date in February?
We need to look at the schedule and see what's possible. So again, I read about it this morning in the newspaper. I haven't received an official request from Parliament on the topic. And I think, again, these are matters that we are constantly working on, that we're constantly dealing with. I was on my phone most of the time here because we're urgently trying to make space in Point Blanche right now this morning to make space since we have court cases going on. So, I also ask for the indulgence of Parliament and understanding that this is a topic that has our full attention as well. It has our full attention from a CPT perspective, where I have to go in June to Strasbourg to explain what we're doing as a country when it comes to the Corallo case and the watchful eyes of the Council of Europe on us. When it comes to the challenges of, what do we do right now with the prison and with capacity? Again, we don't want to get. And that's one of the things that together with the chief prosecutor that has my full attention right now, because we don't want to have a justice system right now where it's a revolving door of the same people coming in and out because there's no space in Point Blanche. And we're acutely and deeply aware of that. And we're looking and seeing how do we make decisions that are in the best interest of our population. Because at the end of the day, for me, what's most important is that the people of St. Martin feel safe. I want to have a St. Martin where you feel safe to do business, where you feel safe to walk on the road, where actually you feel safe to walk on Front Street at night. Because let's be real, a lot of us don't feel safe walking in town at night anymore. And that for me is one of the things where, again, that we can slowly go back to a place where how we used to live, when I grew up as a child. And unfortunately, that's not the reality now, but it's the decisions that we're trying to make on how do we make decisions of who we put where. And again, one of the things that has my great attention as well is the illegal firearm possession in this country, and we really need to do something about it. And I take firearm possession and illegal firearms extremely seriously, and it's one of the things that we really want to address, and why we want to also make bigger examples of people that are caught with illegal firearms or with illegal firearms in committing other crimes, and I really want us to set an example where that's concerned. And I also want St. Martin to be a country where we all know that there are laws and our laws are upheld and they are respected and that there are consequences to our actions. I don't want to have a society where we have to put everybody in jail, but at some point, maybe that's the stance that we need to take. And maybe that's what we need to do to start setting everybody back on a path of good behavior, let's say. And I think, and of mutual respect for one another, because I think it's not just the people that are, in contact with the police and sitting in police cells or in Point Blanche, but I think that even here in this room and everywhere else, that we have an obligation to each other, and we're part of a society, and we have a social contract between us that we agree to adhere to the laws of any community that we live in. So I think that we have a lot of steps to take, whether it's sexual harassment, whether it's tint on our windows, whether it's legal firearms, whether it's, parking illegally somewhere. I think that we all need to do something about it too. But in any case, me, together with the police, together with the chief prosecutor, we're taking a very strong stance when it comes to capacity. So I welcome a discussion with Parliament, but I think also MP Philipsburg, as herself as a criminal lawyer, knows the limitations and knows what we're doing to try to make space. So we are doing all we can, and unfortunately, we're also faced with the issue where if you read in the Netherlands, they are also having capacity issues. In Curacao, they have capacity issues. In Aruba, they have capacity issues. So even using the ORD, as we call it, which is an onderlinge regeling, for us to be able to send detainees to different parts of the kingdom, even that is kind of stretched and leveraged. But it's also a discussion that I had on Monday night and Monday also with individuals from the Ministry of Justice or Security and Safety in the Netherlands to see how we can continue to work on those things. But at the same time, I also have to be realistic as Minister of Justice that the political climate in the Netherlands is also different, and that we also have to face those realities as well.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Jacqueline. This does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. Members of the media, any further questions can be sent to the Minister's Cabinet in writing. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. For rebroadcast, tune into stmartingov.org, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, be sure to log into the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rolika Roach and wishing you a pleasant day further.